Here's a really beautiful wattle in prime flowering time. I'm just again in the Myall area, Bankstown, and I'm on the river flats of the Georges River. Georges River's just over that way. I sort of grew up around here, just up the road on Chippy Norton Lake, Georges River. And there were some big ones of these on Chippy Norton Lake as well. This is Acacia binervia. It's called the coastal Myall. Some wattles get called Myalls, and apparently that refers to any wattle with sort of silvery grey foliage. They might get called Myalls, M-Y-A-L-L. There's a few of them here. They would be remnant, although some of these look like they might be planted along the roadside, but remnant overall. They definitely occur in and around the Georges River here. They're an absolutely stunning wattle, I think. They're in flower now. And I just think the flowers contrasting with the colour of the foliage are just absolutely gorgeous. I could have probably got a better one just down the road there, but there's some construction workers around and tradesmen around, and it might get a bit noisy. I've just chosen this one here. You'd be amazed the number of times I try and make a video on a plant and people get in the way. It's incredible. But it happens. Acacia binervia. It's a tree to 15 metres tall. It's a big, genuine, long-lived wattle. This one here is probably about, maybe 8 metres or so. It's a nice, genuine size. It gets this really nice fissured bark. I've got these really rough bark here. I've got these strips, so with a bit of effort I can pull them off. They've got a beautiful colour. Sort of a mixture of reddy brown and darker grey maybe, or pale grey at least. But they've got this nice reddish brown colour. It's all fissured all the way down. Looking a little bit like an ironbark eucalypt, I suppose, just a little bit. It's a beautiful trunk. The geographic range, it's really interesting. They're a New South Wales tree mainly, but they just creep into Victoria. They're in the Snowy Mountains. Not too far inland, but on the tablelands. And in Victoria, they're critically endangered. They're only known from one population in the Snowy Mountains in Victoria. It's incredibly interesting. In New South Wales, they're common along the coast. They don't punch inland too far, except for that Snowy Mountains area. They're nestled somewhere in there, but they're mainly up the coast. When they get up to Sydney, they sort of go up the Blue Mountains a bit, I think to Lithgow. And they also punch through to the Hunter Valley to around Muswellbrook and Denman, to around that area. Then as they go north, they're just into Queensland, I think just into Queensland, west of Brisbane there, and they don't go a lot further. That's their natural range. So it's very interesting. They're critically endangered in Victoria, and if you did see these in Victoria, you'd want to sort of keep them because they're a beautiful plant. I've seen them in New South Wales on Port Stephens Headland. On the Port Stephens Headland there, they grow on the very highest rocky sort of slopes, and they overlook the ocean. And they can be trees in that habitat, but a lot of the time they tend to be smaller shrubs, but they definitely get to that size there. So it's interesting to see them at Port Stephens where they grow overlooking the ocean, sort of on the rocky cliff tops. It's an interesting patch and an interesting place to see them. Here's the phyllodes. They're described as having a leathery feel. You can see they're very bluey grey. They've got a nice bluey grey colouring. They're described as being coriaceous, which means leathery. They are a little bit leathery. They're described as being up to 15 centimetres long by about 23 millimetres wide. That's that's sort of the dimensions given on New South Wales Flora anyway. So Whether you could get one wider than 23 mil, it's possible, I suppose. But yeah, they look to be about that width, up to 15 centimetres long. It's called Acacia binervia, but a lot of people agree it's a bit of a poor name for it. It's meant to have, that would mean 2 main veins in the leaves. But these guys are described as having up to 3 or 4 or more main veins if you have a close look. The obvious 2 veins is not really obvious to most people. And we think that generally binervia, it's not a very good name for it. Maybe it should be trinervia or even more. They've got it, so yeah, the venation of the phyllodes, it's not, in terms of there being 2 veins, it's not highly obvious. If you just start zooming in, yeah, you can see 3 main veins there. Maybe sometimes you can see 2. Maybe the herbarium material used to identify the species was a bit poor. Just maybe it wasn't, maybe the foliage was just a bit minimal, but yeah, it's just a bit mysterious why it's binervia when normally we see more than that. There is a similar Sydney wattle. There is another Sydney wattle called Acacia binervia. That's a 2-veined hickory. And in my workshops, I just show people binervia and binervia at the same time because the names are so similar. And you just want to be able to discern the 2 species and learn which one's which, but they're very different. They're very, very different in the foliage, and binervia has globular heads, doesn't have spikes. Binervia has 2 obvious veins in the phyllodes, which are a very different appearance to this one. But just note, there's Acacia binervia and binervia out there. You can get the 2 confused. So just make sure you watch for that. So they're sort of 2 good ones to sort of go over together. It's unlikely you'll get binervia and binervia in the same habitat at the same time. You could on some sites, but it might just be a little bit unlikely. Binervia likes river flat country. Just, yeah, this is where it grows around here in the river flat eucalypt forest. It likes a sandy deposit in the Hunter Valley near Denman. It's probably growing on sand, maybe around the creeks and rivers there. Just note at Port Stephens, it does get up on the rocky headlands as well. There's meant to be a gland at the base of the phyllodes. There's meant to be a gland, well, right down the bottom there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick it up, but there is meant to be one gland right down near the base of the pulvinus. I think I can just see it there on that phyllodes, perhaps. I haven't had a really close observation of it. It's another wattle that's easy to identify, just through the size of it, the foliage, the trunk, and we might tend to overlook the glands on the phyllodes. I'm pretty sure I've got one there. Oh, yeah, there it is there. That little white bit of tissue on the edge of the leaf there, just at the base of the pulvinus. That's the gland. And it's just got one. I think it just says one pretty much all the time. So that's our phyllodes. What was it, 15 centimetres long, 23 mil wide. And then we've got these gorgeous inflorescences. I think they're up to about 6 centimetres long, these individual spikes. And what you can get up to 5 in each leaf axil. You can get 1 to 5. And where you do get multiple inflorescences, they're on the one structure. So this time they don't seem to be separated and coming from different, well, the one point of origin, but sometimes they seem to be on a branched structure, like they're not quite all separate. I'm just trying to show that here. It's, yeah, see how they're sort of connected there to a common stem. So we've got inflorescences coming off the one common point of origin there, where in Floribunda, they seem to be all coming from off the stem. They were all sort of individual but clustered in the leaf axil. It's a very small difference, but it's just interesting when the inflorescences, I've got a really good one here, they're coming off the one common stem. You can see that there. So it's almost like You could almost call it a sort of panicle, or you know, it's a sort of branch cluster of flower of inflorescences. Anyway, you can see they're coming off the one common stem there. Sometimes they're just the three, what would we call it? The three peduncles of those spikes would just be all going into the leaf axil, and they'd all sort of be separate but sort of clustered together. So that's interesting. I think I noticed this at the last workshop and I hadn't really picked up on it before. You can see there's a lot of bud going on, and we could count the flowers. They're not as interrupted as Floribunda, which I just did the other day, Acacia floribunda. They're a bit more clustered. There's less gaps between the flowers, but they're beautiful. Yeah, about 6 centimeters long, about 1 centimeter wide or so. These spikes are absolutely beautiful. Here's one here which has got, yeah, this might have the 5. It does. 1, 2, might even have 6. That might be coming from a different point of origin. Yeah, sorry to geek out about this, but there's 4 or 5 there coming off 5, I think, the one sort of structure there. So it's a beautiful tree. It'll produce pods, of course, but there's no pods here now. I'm not overly familiar with what the pods look like, but I'm sure a lot are produced. Have to look out for those when it's time for it to finish up, but you probably won't be using the pods to identify it, but they'll come on after this guy's finished. You can see this one, it's not even in full cry yet, it's still going. But I think it's a stunner. I'd really like to have one of these in my garden. They're just beautiful. They get pretty big. The flowers go right up the tree. This one's in a fair bit of shade. It's sort of underneath some eucalypts, but when they're out in the full sun, this was a wattle I started noticing as a teenager when I'd sort of ride my bike around Chippy Norton Lake. I remember some trees growing right on the edge of the lake in full sun, sort of almost overhanging the water. And they were just glorious. I used to bring home cuttings for mum, and she'd put them in a vase. Yeah, they're just an absolutely gorgeous tree. So that's Acacia binervia. Don't confuse it with Acacia binervata. That's a very different wattle. Just remember, if you're writing your flora reports or any sort of botanical tidbit, just note that when you're writing those species, you can accidentally put binervata instead of binervia. I've seen it happen in 1 or 2 flora reports. Just got to make sure you get the name right. It's a bit unfair on us that one species did get two species have been named so similarly. It creates big potential for confusion, but we're stuck with that. Just note the new tips can be really green, and the stems have this really rubbery feel. They've got this nice sort of rubbery feel to them. So that's beautiful Acacia binervia. They're sort of pruniose as well. They've got a bit of grey wax on them as you have a look there. Beautiful tree, long-lived, a nice long-lived wattle. These guys have been here for years.